food captions and
We're ready when the board
it's
is.
not great.
It's ready. It's capturing it's on Bluetooth. Yep,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I don't even need to call a meeting.
I think you do,
Yeah, I probably should.
because there's more than 3 of you.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, for more, yeah. Okay, make a motion to call the meeting to order.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Marshall?
Aye.
Trustee Coe?
Aye.
Trustee Limbeck?
Aye.
Trustee Wilkes?
Aye.
Mayor Plummer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, I guess I should do just to close, do I need to? I'm sure, I guess I could. Just for the record.
Yep.
Is there anything that any trustee needs to disclose regarding the question tonight of village signage or parking?
I do not. I do not.
I do not.
And I do not. Okay. With that being said, would you hear the guidelines for conducting a meeting with the public?
Sure, we'll do the
Just the
quick
clip
one.
notes.
This is Cliff Notes. If you're appearing on Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to speak. If you rather we ask the question, please put it in the Q&A. Please don't put it in chat. If you're in the room, please stand up. You can stay wherever you are, given the number of people we have. Give your name and address if applicable by law. And let's have a nice, productive meeting.
Yeah. And actually, this really isn't technically a meeting. It is a roundtable discussion. That's the invitation. I just want to thank all of you for coming. I know everybody had a long work day. So I think it's really great that we're seeing so many people turn out this evening. Also, I want to thank our code officer too, Steve Louth, for staying, and Dorothea, our clerk and treasurer, and also Alexandria, our deputy clerk, for helping us to facilitate tonight. I do want this to be informal, but I just don't want everybody shouting at once. So the formality, I think, will be just if you can raise your hand so you can just be recognized to speak. So everybody kind of gets the chance to chime in. 2 items, and we put this out in the invitation to you all that we wanted to talk about. The board has been looking at village signage and possibly updating the code a bit. There have been a few tweaks already. And I think did you all pick up agendas and see some of the pictures and the packets out in the hall? Okay.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah, just if people didn't get them, maybe we can pass them around. We can pass these up if people need extras. Yeah, we've seen these. So we just wanted to kind of have everybody weigh in on things. Because okay, you have it.
There's more coming. We get now.
And just to give a little bit more framework, just to give a little bit more framework, for how we see just the next hour or so go. We really want to listen to business owners. We welcome anybody to sit in on the meeting if you're a resident, or Zoom in if you're a resident. But I think this is really the focus, is to hear from our brick and mortar retailers in the village. We have, this is what we're about. So we ask that the residents respect that and just certainly pretend you're watching C-SPAN. That was a joke. It's like watching paint dry. So with that being said, what we're looking at in signage is to put in or allow or enable businesses to have signs that are perpendicular to your building, your storefront, as an option, just as an option. And some of the discussion, and the board members can chime in, and we certainly want to hear from you. We don't want to take up too much time, but some of the discussion was, and my thought was too, that there's a little bit of a sort of a flat affect as you go down some of our, like Main Street, for example. A little more like a shopping mall, where all the signage is just on the face of the building. And we did have some older pictures. I don't know that we have the copies of those. We can send them out to you after this meeting, if you gave us your email, that show what the village looked like years ago, with all kinds of interesting signage that sort of broke up the streetscape, engaged people in a different way. So, and also, even if you're driving down the street or walking, you can see the sign up ahead over the sidewalk in that instance, if you choose. Put in perpendicular signs, so, if anybody wants to weigh in on that, you know, that's something that we're looking at, we're just sort of circling back on that portion of the code. Any thoughts? You love it, you hate it, you,
I think it's great, the more options we have, the better.
okay, you can raise your hands.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's reminiscent of the older
Yeah.
Pittsburgh village. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all.
Okay, well, we're a beautifully preserved village, and I think it kind of references, as you say, the past, and I think that was. I know trustee Cove, you felt the same way, I think you.
Yeah,
had a meeting
I
too.
think what was appealing to me was that because we really want our business district to be very pedestrian friendly focused as compared to car focused. If you're walking the streets and you see the sign overhead, it's gonna be much more appealing than if you're driving down and just kind of looking at the side streets. So we want to really focus on, you know, the walkability, the pedestrian friendliness, the quaintness of a village instead of really focusing on, if you're a car, you're zooming down the street, you can see it on top of the building. So that's kind of why it approached me.
And again, it's just an option, we've rather, you don't have to change your sign, I don't think that's what this is about, it's just another option for you. Going forward. But yeah, Dave.
So I agree with the particular nature of it, as long as, it goes through the ACV approval and is, historic in its nature and character, I think it makes a ton of sense. Two of the questions that I had, one was materials, right? Metal, wood, but today you get a lot of the, not particle board, but it's sort of that plastic that's PVC is a plastic made to look like wood. And one of my challenges, and I'd love your opinion on this, is as you're walking down Main Street, as you look up at the sign that might only be 3-4 feet above you, to have it not be a little bit more historical in character, metal, painted wood. And because there's business turnover from a frankly environmental perspective, I don't want to create something that lasts 10,000 years, that it's only going to be around for possibly 5 to 10, barring a very successful, great business that stays for a long time. But I think painted wood for metal makes more sense to me. I just thought the way you're open on that.
And typically our historic preservation board, there's specifications of materials that would be used, just as we do that when we're doing renovation.
Respect that, though there is, within historical, national code, there is the availability of going beyond traditional materials. For example, things siding or housing. We don't control that, but in our code, we can. Right, so we can be more restrictive if we wanted to. And I guess I'm putting it back to you, as to the extent that would feel like an overstep, right, versus something that makes sense.
Sure, yeah, go ahead, rename please.
Bonnie Hahn, 50 State Street. I own 2 businesses there. So both of my signs are made with PVC, but they have the wood grain look to it. So I feel like it gives that feel without it looking like a cheaper plastic. So I think there is options to do that. And when I talked to the guy who made my sign, he said that for like wearability, weather and things like that, that it would be more like ideal and less like taking it down and painting it and things like
So
that.
you feel comfortable with that on a hanging sign across Main Street on perpendicular as well?
I think as long as it like was like pleasing and aesthetic nature, yeah.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts from folks on signage? Yeah, fine. State your name, just.
I'm Bonnie McGowan, Notion, as the designer in me wants it to be consistent. So maybe it's all the same rod with either an oval or a circle, and then your logo goes on it. But I don't know how people feel about that, if part of the charm is that everything is different and big and
It's not
whatever.
cookie cutter.
It can get a little trashy though, if you start putting them on and, you've got one business and after the other, and the next thing you know, you got 8 signs in a 20 area, it might get kind of trashy, so I don't know.
No, that's a good point.
I think that goes to, we were talking about standardization, right? So what were the parameters that, whether it's materials, sizing, right?
Why don't we have our code enforcement officer who knows all about signage and, well, there's specs for signs.
I think you'd have to do the size based on the linear footage like we do regular
It's
signs.
in the code now.
I would think if somebody wanted a cloth sign, you know, the old signs were, some of them were cloth signs or
Like
hanging
canvas and-
flag, so they
Awning.
moved a little bit. I understand your point, if you had, you know, 5 or 6 in a row, the 3 in the middle are done.
Right.
You know what I mean, but down in your area of the woods, those flag signs work because as you're coming down, you see them.
Right.
In the streetscape down here, the projecting signs would make more sense. You know, and they would have to be 8 foot above the sidewalk, you know, so nobody's getting hit in the head or anything like that.
Yeah, one other thing too, remember, we also spoke about putting signage on the awnings. If we had an awning, we should have, yeah, we'll put out some pictures of that as well. Again, for another option. It's not that, you know, so. Just to be clear, I don't think we're thinking, you have a sign on the front, you have a perpendicular sign, you have a sign on your you know. We're gonna have some sort of restrictions on that, but. Just again, it's another option, yeah, and again, specify, you know, the specs are already there in the code. So, and I know, Mary Ann, you came back for another sign, a sign
did.
inside, yeah,
I did, and I think it looks really nice.
yeah, it does.
And I'm just thinking about like this perpendicular sign, how I would be able to take advantage of that. I don't think it suits me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I have a front sign and it's so nice now that I have a sign coming up out of Northview Common. It, people don't ask me where the coffee shop is.
Yeah, she's a neutral ground.
Yeah.
I just want you to say your name and business when you speak, just so everybody in the room knows.
Yeah, so,
So that works for you,
it,
what you have, yeah.
the code in place right now works for me,
Mhm.
and the sign on the side of my building works, but I could see. Places like Cleo and Ken and, you know, places up on Main Street, having that option to have a vertical sign
Mhm.
with, or a horizontal sign or whatever, it would be like a big advantage for them. You know, you drive down into Northfield Common and you drive around and, you know, you just, all the flat signs still stand out.
Yeah, one thing that, I know came back to the board fairly recently was that, you know, we essentially have 2 separate commercial districts. We have our Main Street district and then we have Shane Place, Northfield. And, with Northfield, I think specifically, it's on private property, so it has a very different, approach for anybody wanting to shop down there. As opposed to you're walking on Main Street and, you know, you're walking by every single shop. To go into Northfield Common, I think was a different, just had a different sort of set of factors to look
I
at.
would like to comment or ask the audience your question. Who's here to talk about signage? One, okay. Who's here to talk about parking? Okay, so who said in respect to time, I think that I'd like to make it.
Yeah, we're gonna be closing it out, you know, we're gonna run a meeting here. I just wanted to just close out if there were any additional comments about the signage or anything else you wanted to say, yeah, Chris.
Hi, Chris from Book Culture. Just one thing to consider, we've had success with mallocations is, I'm not saying anyone's gonna agree with this, but having 2 poles and a banner, like a lot of museums and stuff do, can be extremely visible. And from my point of view, the most effective signage is gonna be hitting I don't know how many cars pass by our village, but almost everybody walking, I think they'll be aesthetically pleasing if we have some signs sticking out, but I think, like small banners would be terrific. Not necessarily, and the other comment I would make is, the buildings are all very, very different, so I don't think you'd wanna homogenize it too much.
Right, and I
It's
think
so-
that's where
it's
we're
so
going.
Different, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going, because now this is yet another option to vary the streetscape with sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. When you say banners, what, are they from the building, hanging from the building?
Yeah, so imagine two
Oh,
arms and a banner that hangs down,
okay,
which
gotcha.
would last, 4 or 5 years and be on very long.
Mhm.
And it would move a little bit, it's tied with rope to the thing, and
Okay.
typically you see them outside when you display it, like the mat at one of the museums.
Okay, just so I'm understanding it. Thank you. Any other comments before we move on? Anything? thanks a lot, you know, just to kind of get the bearings here. Next up, we want to talk about parking in the village. I think sheets were sent out about, it was a thing you did about the number of parking spaces in the village. It wasn't a thorough survey. Did some of you have this or not? Let's pass it here. We'll pass some of these.
It's on the table on the website as well.
Yeah, it's also on the
Yeah.
website too, so if you don't. So we're really just trying to, revisit our parking code. And this is, we're looking at it as a general topic, not for specific comment on, you know, anything else going on in the village, but just where we are with parking. I would like to start with, I know some of you have seen the cones on Main Street at the corner of Lincoln, where it comes out to South Main. It's temporary right now, because we've had so many fender benders and complaints from pedestrians, people walking dogs or with strollers crossing. If there's a high profile vehicle parked on that corner, you can't see around it. So it's just a quick fix right now. And if the snow ever melts, in the spring, we really want to come back and talk about this with everybody, because we're probably gonna need to really redo some parking spots, and what does that look like on Main Street, where cars are so much larger now. We literally, and actually the NISTOP, the Department of Transportation, has even changed the specifications for length of parking spots, because cars are so much larger than they ever used to be. So it's changing the nature of some of the parking spots on our streets. Steve, you know this too. So we're gonna be circling back on that, but that's just there temporarily. Because there've been so many fender benders and hits and misses, and it's always kind of the issue of bicycles, pedestrians and cars in our village. So the board has been looking at, and will be looking at, the parking code. Just to give you some sort of framework about this, there's a trend of a lot of communities looking at parking mandates for businesses coming into their communities, and the effect of what these parking mandates mean. And you all know, if you're opening a business, you need to have X amount of parking spots. There's sort of a little algorithm in the code of how you determine these parking spots, whether you're a restaurant or, you know, a different type of retail operation. And the thought is, and this is a discussion we want to hear from the business owners about this, is how do we look at parking going forward? Because our village is built out. You know, here we are, was pretty much built out since the canal came through. So we have what we have, and some of the models, and I can use Buffalo as an example. Buffalo abolished all parking requirements for any businesses, I think about 8 years ago. And it's still in effect to this day. They did it for a different reason. They did it for the reason that they wanted to be able to incentivize developers to put in housing, because they had a housing shortage. But we're built out, so we're looking at it from a different perspective. Because we do see, when there are requirements on business owners to come up with a certain amount of parking spots, if we really back that algorithm out and truly apply it to the businesses, we would have cars stacked up on each other in the municipal lot behind the library, for example. Everybody's sort of sharing, you know, all the spaces. So we're kind of at our sea level for parking. And we may want to look at, do we end those restrictive parking mandates for businesses? Is it an undue hardship for businesses coming in? And I know there's not enough parking. We actually have, for a village, a significant amount of parking, more than most other villages, even in the county, per capita. So I just want you to, you know, that's sort of the framework of what we're looking at. Is there anything anybody wants to add to that? But that's kind of where we are, to come back and look at the parking code and what it means for a business to have to meet parking requirements that, where the parking may or may not exist.
I'm of the opinion that, if a business is gonna open in the village, they have to do their business model, take a look at what can we do, what can't we do. For us to sit here and say you have to have 14 spaces, that's unrealistic. Now, you look at other cities, New York City, a business opens up, they don't get 14 spots or 22 spots,
They're
so.
probably required to have 800.
Right, but, you know, I think people, if they wanna go someplace, they're gonna find a place to park, and we do have municipal lots. And I think it's hard enough to run a business many days without having to have what I'm gonna consider an artificial requirement, but we're trying to make those numbers, how do we do that?
So my take on this, and I've had a lot of residents, email me and text me, over this issue. And it's not so much, not being business friendly as much as it is to protect the residential living that we have here. You know, we're all kind of sharing spots on the sides of the streets and the parking lots. And if we bring in lots of business that needs lots of spaces, then what happens to the people that live here that also need to use the street parking? So I know that a lot of residents were concerned about that, about delivery trucks taking up parking spaces when they're doing deliveries. So I think we just need to be careful about, you know, obviously we all want business to be here. We want business to be successful. We want customers to have parking. But we also have to make sure that we're sensitive about our residents being able to, you know, park on their street or have company and have a spot for company to park when they're living in their homes. So, you know, we have to kind of balance both of those, and I'm being very sensitive to the residents as well.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, name it and your business, please, huh?
I'm Highland resident, Lincoln Avenue.
Oh, can we hear from business owners first?
Well, I'm kind of indirectly part. My wife, family owns a lot of property. in this village.
Okay.
And I can only tell you that a few years ago, the village passed an ordinance that businesses that did not have any parking couldn't be held to the parking rule. And so we were approached about opening up where the bridal shop is and the salon. They wanted to put in a Hicks McCarthy style restaurant again. They wanted to do a soda fountain, you know, someplace for the high school kids to hang out. I don't know, a lot of people here don't remember Hicks McCarthy's, but it was us older crew do. And it went through the whole process, and it was, even though that building did not have any parking, never has, it was killed because it didn't have any garbage area. They didn't want that amount.
Something different, that's not parking, yeah.
It was all this other stuff,
Yeah.
the peripheral stuff. So if you're gonna look at parking, you gotta look at a lot more expansive stuff than that, because
Mhm.
it all falls under the same run.
No, I appreciate that, thank you, and I know that the board does. I want to hear from brick and mortar business owners, we'll do residents in a minute. Residents in a minute,
Jerry, we're a business.
pardon me?
District Farm Jerry, we're.
Oh, I didn't know you were representing the dairy, I didn't understand that. Yep.
Okay. District Farm Theory, 44 North Main Street. So a lot of here people may not remember, but back in the 1990s, there was a parking crisis in the village because at that time there were 21 real estate offices that all had weekly meetings there. And at the time, the members of the village board developed what was called the radial parking plan, where parking in the center had a high turnover and it was monitored to keep those spaces available for customers. And then employee areas for employees were designated, like on South Main Street between Stonegate Lane and Jefferson Road. So then, since that time, obviously, the village has gone through several different business cycles, and the issues are different today. What I'm concerned about is the whole concept of zero parking requirement works in urban settings where there's an endless grid of streets that feeds a commercial corridor. A great example of that would be like Berkeley and Park Avenue in the city of Rochester. It won't work in the village of Pittsburgh. And this whole concept was studied exhaustively.
Oh, I'd love
The
to see
village
that
is
study, that'd be great.
award-winning comprehensive plan.
Love to see.
And the reason is simply the geography. The village has a very small grid of streets with very short blocks. That doesn't have the same capacity as typical in urban settings where this concept has been applied. The other thing is north of the Four Corners, we have something called the Erie Canal with virtually no parking there. And same thing on Shane Place. Shane Place is sandwiched between the Powers Farm, which has a permanent conservation easement, and the Erie Canal. So I think the lesson here is that you have to use a
1 minute.
strategy that actually fits the village, not imposing something that's been used successfully in urban centers.
Okay, thank you for that comment. I'd love to see that study that you identified, that'd be great. If you could just let us know, you could just reach out to Dorothea. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Corby, how do they enforce the realtor that era? How do they enforce?
That's when the village first hired a parking monitor back in the, it was either the late eighties or early 1990s. And they chalked the tires, protected it accordingly. They had a procedure where the person was given a warning once or twice, and then if they were repeat offenders, they got a ticket.
Yeah, so I think it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, my default on this was, it probably makes sense to not have a parking requirement. And then you start, living in the village a little longer, you start having these very successful businesses that you go to and that you visit and you love that they're here, and you think, how would a very high intensity business impact that might have a prolonged hours of visitation affect these businesses that you love, right? What's the impact of that? And then what's the impact on residential character? And so I guess, again, putting it out to you guys, to what degree do you lean in on no parking requirements, or do you feel it may have an adverse impact on your business, or you think it was an impediment to start and still is today to new businesses coming in? I mean, what's your perspective in general is what I'd love to hear.
Chris,
Right, Chris Dan from Book Culture. I have a couple of thoughts. One is, I think it would be useful to get an estimate of how many, I mean, if we filled all the spaces that are available with the, the range of a high-end business is very successful, you come up with some understanding of how many cars we're talking about. We can actually see what kind of problem we have. I do think we ought to be sensitive to people's homes. It's so peaceful, just back of Main Street, either direction, and that's a wonderful gift that this village offers us as residents. But another thought I have is that the signage we have for directing people to parking is could be vastly improved. So when we identify spots, whether it's one or a parking lot, I think directing people in the village who want that from any direction can know, oh, here's my parking. And I think it's very important for us to consider what time it is of day, because obviously a restaurant, if it was to open, that serves dinner, has a different effect on the parking spaces than another place that's doing lunch next to Fatouche or something. So I think that's important. And what I would be leaning towards is co-opting as much as we can any of the lots that are already here, next to the bank and over there. And especially when we can have an evening business, which would be, I think, terrific, like restaurants, everything. But I do think it would be worthwhile again to understand how many cars we're talking about here and what time of day are they coming, because it would be, I think you would be making some people uncomfortable if there were a constant flow of cars. And I do think we would direct them to these places along Washington and Lincoln and
well, part of our active transportation, thank you, I think those are really, solid comments, because we do have just sort of different cycles of, business, we have our daytime businesses, and then it sort of switches over at night, and we're at night, and we're not like a super late night community. And typically people coming in, unless there's a big event, at night can find parking. But I want to get back to our active transportation plan, because we do have on-street parking throughout our village, and we should, because it's also traffic calming for cars. That's just proven. Every municipality hopes to have enough on-street parking to slow cars down. It's a visual cue for anybody driving through. And I think we may want to factor in, we already have parking on our side streets. What really would change with not having these mandates? What would the net effect be? Would it be all hell breaks loose, or would it be kind of where it is right now? And we just acknowledge it in our code. I mean, I think that's something we need to write down back there.
Hi.
Yeah, name is business, Tiffany.
Salon Vida.
on Main Street. It's just a whole bunch of listening to everybody throw everything out there. I did the chalk thing, I think it was like 7 years ago they stopped doing that. With our spa businesses, and I know that all salons in the area, and a bunch of them that we have, I don't think anyone's here from those places. We have state laws, we have to run by ourselves. So I can't let a client leave with color on their hair and move the car that's only marked for 2 hours. I'll get fined $1,000 depending on how nice you have the person coming to your salon.
Who's enforcing that?
New York State.
No, but I mean, in our village.
Well,
Used to.
they'll tattle.
No,
Somebody
it
will
is.
tattle
Oh,
somebody. 'cause it's a
Somebody will
state
rat you out. Okay.
I know that you let someone go to their
Mhm.
farm, because that's just the way everybody's growing up. But it's just a whole bunch of things, that I feel from watching it 17 years of looking out that big window. There's a constant, I think it's an accumulation, things that are just blowing up and making it even worse for the parking. You have huge trucks coming through here, avoiding 490 and 390 and 590, and they're coming through our village to get to Henrietta, and they're causing major problems. You have to have all the traffic back up and jackknife, and they've got to pull out and run over our sidewalk, and then you've got to replace it every year.
Mhm.
It's a problem. They've got to be rerouted. I mean, they can't keep coming for our village. They ruin our roads, they cause a lot of problems, and I think that's hard for our people to handle that. Here's the garbage on somebody, people like, I'm a car, and you gotta stop all this traffic, and then you got a big, huge guys jackknifing kind of coming for our village, and it's awful. I mean, I can understand the trouble for all the businesses. You know, wanting to come from and do deliveries, so there has to be a line of demarcation for those guys taking the shortcut and killing our village. We aren't meant for those big guys to get to the state roads, they gotta take 490. I know what they're doing, because none of them are dropping off a car in our village.
Yeah. I appreciate that, and I hate to add to the problem, but you know they're gonna be redoing the bridge right down here by Whole Foods for the next, what, year and a half, almost 2 years. Well, that's, hang on one second though, yeah, and I appreciate the comments, because we have so many, I think on Monroe to State through the village, we have something like 29,000 cars every day go through. We're a tiny village. We primarily have our main arteries are all owned by the state. We have no control over them,
The ones on the outside?
or the truck routes, yeah. We have,
But why do they have to come
Main
first?
Street is a state road. Monroe Avenue and State Street is a state road. These are state roads that we have no control over, and believe me, we talk to NICEDOT a lot. Yes, your hands up, name and. this-
Hi, I'm Emmy from Sutherland Auto.
I am.
I have a question about that any restaurant that wanted to go in a new corner.
We're gonna talk about parking.
My question is, there's an Airbnb above it, right?
Yeah.
Where that is, okay. Right now there is,
Okay,
yeah.
where do those people park? And is that counted into the parking that that gentleman wants for that restaurant?
Steve, do you want to speak to that? I mean, that's, was not a requirement.
Have no clue.
It was not a requirement.
There's actually not an application open right now for you guys to discuss
Yeah,
for that
yeah, so
address
we-
right now.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather talk about, in general about parking rather than specific. Excuse me one second, I just want to finish my sentence. Thanks. I just want to, have us speak to the overarching aspects of parking in the village and some of the concerns that you have. And just things that we're looking at, as opposed to very specific businesses. We can always talk offline about that. But I think to single out specific businesses with any application, we cannot speak to anything, any application like that. Yeah, David,
Well, here, you can go first.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna recognize people whose hand was up.
Yeah, Brad Braden.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Hey, Brad.
Monroe and 3830 Monroe. I'm glad we're talking about parking because I've been working in the village for over 20 years and looked at 7 businesses here, and all I've seen is the parking get worse and worse in the village every year. And I feel like we're losing space, you know what I mean? It's not functioning. There's no place for people to park. Where do people park?
So can I ask you, why do you think it's getting worse? Give me some reasons why it's getting worse. You're saying there's less, people are not able to find?
I have to monitor my lot literally on a daily basis. I can't even plow my parking lot, move a cone that I have in one of my spaces. I have to move that cone
which I have there so that nobody parks there. And when I plow, by the time I get back in my vehicle to push the snow there, somebody's in that spot.
So can I ask you, being the business owner for a long time, been here for a long time, why do you think that's happening? Do you think it's because we have more business
I
here?
mean, I appreciate that we're talking about parking, but I don't think there's been any forethought over the years of where people are gonna park. I mean, we were talking about this when the library was built.
So you're saying you agree with the criteria of having to have certain number of parking spaces for businesses that are coming in?
Well, I wish you guys had done that about 30 years ago. It would have saved us about 60 grand, but.
Well, we
Say
said
it.
we do.
Sorry about that, I plead the fifth, I
I
wasn't
think
here.
it's unfair to businesses that had to, you know, show spots for their employees, spots for their customers,
Yeah.
and everything.
Mhm.
And signage, everything, you know, handicap. And then other businesses just turn the key and open their door, you know?
So you're saying there's not consistency, because right now we do have parking restrictions for certain businesses, right? They have to, everybody's supposed to follow the same criteria. So you're saying that, you're feeling that people are not having to follow the same criteria.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and also with, you know, now you're changing something that's been there for years. Well, I'm not saying it's a
We're not-
bad thing or a good thing, I'm just saying that you need to be consistent. It's not fair to people
Mm-hmm.
that had to jump through hoops to be legal or in compliance,
Mhm.
and people that just walk in and open the door, you know?
No, I understand, and I think your comments are well taken, you know.
And you know, if I look at your list, you know, where it says
Mhm.
50-something parking spots on Sutherland Street, I mean, there's no way somebody is gonna come into the village of Pittsburgh and park on Sutherland Street and walk down to a business down there.
And that's.
Let alone, every kid is taking up every spot on that street every day during the school year, you know? So, I'm glad that we're talking about it, but there needs to be a more permanent solution, you know?
That's why we're talking about it.
I know.
I mean, that's why we're literally here and getting everybody to weigh in, so thank you.
Close a couple businesses and rent a spot.
Okay, yeah, in the back there, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Oh, I want to hear from,
But just quickly, I'm just wondering if it's because there's so many similar businesses, I know my services, I think maybe that's to take that into consideration. And like, if we can do a survey of timing, like my services can run from 2 to 3 hours. And then they like to go to the bookstore, or they like to get a cup of coffee now across the street, because now they exist, so that creates more time that they're keeping a spot out. So I don't know if there's a scientific or whatever, somebody that knows how to do that, when you're placing businesses in spaces, maybe that's what's changed, is we have way more spa services. And that are creating longer term sitting, I know people go get their face injected or their body doing.
so you're saying the 2-hour limit is an issue?
Well,
I mean, I'm just trying to-
It's like, you want them to stay in our village, I love.
No, an issue for people who are trying to come in because the nature of services have changed, that's all.
Or there's a lot more of the same that are staying longer, because we don't have a variety, we have a lot of the same. So then that's what's changed.
No, that's a good point, because we definitely, markets change, retail has changed a lot. David, you got a comment?
It's like just on that topic.
Well, I think.
It's on the top. So I'm glad you brought that up because two things. One, I think going back to your point about if we kind of knew what is the worst case scenario in terms of status quo code, right? So if we look at the current businesses today, if they all were to follow the rules in the code as it stands, how many parking spots are we looking at, right? And what is that number versus whatever we have here, the 487 parking spots, right? What is the actual scale of the problem that we're looking at? That's the first thing, is right, trying to understand that. The other aspect I think goes to Sutherland Auto and then what you said. Yes, we do have a lot of salons. I don't know, I moved here relatively recently. I don't know what the village looked like 15 years ago, if there were just as many salons that we had, or if it was completely different. So so it sounds like the businesses that we have accepted has changed over time, right? So I think going back to your point of something's happening right now, I don't know how many parking spots have potentially gone away. I know there was the narrowing of
Oh,
Main
further
Street,
down towards, yeah,
further down. right?
again, it's a state-owned road.
State-owned road, we
Yeah, I
lost a couple of parking spots there.
think we lost 3.
Okay, so we lost them there, but it also sounds like the census of the type of businesses that we are approving and that we have here has changed. So that may be part of the issue, and it would be interesting, I don't know, do we have that number of what?
No, but I could figure it out, like, I could tell you that if you were to add up the businesses in this village compared to what the spaces are right here. You're saying 480 spots, you're taking all the side roads and all those odd spaces.
I totally understand it's not
That's
realistic,
That's
but
not realistic, because if you took the businesses that are within the center, you're overloaded.
yeah.
And you always will be,
Always.
because we're built out. In other words, it's kind of, here we are back to where we started.
But it goes
Yeah.
back to, again, that business A might need spots from
Exactly.
1 to 10. Business B might need spots from 7 to 14. And so that's a whole dynamic of what businesses come
The
in.
coffee shop may have somebody stop in for 5 minutes and leave,
Yeah.
versus someone who's getting, I don't know anything about hair stuff, but they're getting their hair colored or something for 3 hours, and that may be different.
Yeah, yes.
So a couple things on that. One, I do think that there's a relatively fluid nature to finding what type of businesses use spots at what different times. You're not gonna wanna say to one property owner, you can't rent to this particular use because there's too many at that time slot.
Yeah.
Right, to a degree, you kind of have to let, market forces work itself. But I do think that there are times where certain types of businesses have persistency of use throughout the day for extended time slots, like a salon or a spa, where also beyond just the parking implications we've heard from residents, there's been a relative plethora of approvals for various reasons. And so, I've brought this to the board in the past. This is not for today's discussion, but if anybody does have an opinion as to whether or not the use code should be used in this case to perhaps turn on or off the availability of certain types of businesses as to encourage more of those that we may want at any given moment. So for example, now it may be retail or restaurant or experience versus salon and spa or a real estate agency, etc. So again, send feedback, but if it has an implication on parking, as it sounds like you're thinking it may be in sort of another reason to revisit that. The other quick comment, this has to do with residential character. I just wanted to kind of throw this out. If you eliminate parking requirements, you can control for impact on residents by the timing by which businesses could be allowed or permitted to be open. It is a different way to address the bleed into a residential character by having hours of operation for certain types of businesses be restricted, at certain times. It is one way. The other quick comment is as far as parking, to the degree that you don't have any parking requirements and maybe you have more businesses that have higher density needs, your enforcement officer, right, or in this case, parking enforcement officer, may have to be working more often, more double duty to put a little bit of fear into people who are parking. So on one hand, it's, do you have tighter parking requirements before business comes in, or do you have a tighter enforcement on the back end? I think both could perhaps be legitimate options, but I think if you go this route, the danger is that you'll have to jack up enforcement in order to ensure that, and or potentially go the route of having 2-hour parking be more enforced. And
Help me understand what's a danger? I'm sorry about a danger. What's the danger of something?
so think about if you have very high parking use businesses come in as a result of having no parking requirements part of the code. And if they were to be of hours of operation that is during the day, maybe doesn't have an impact on residential character. The question is would you have to more often enforce 2-hour parking or 3-hour parking? Would you have to more often enforce where employees could or could not park, right? And how do you do that? So rather than having a tighter or tightening the ability to just rather than having parking requirements be part of the application, you have the enforcement bleed over onto us in order to ensure the movement. of parking throughout the day. And I
Or
think
residential parking only after 6 p.m.
things of that nature. So this, I say danger, but it's two different ways potentially to tap.
We should look at all of it. We should look at all of it. You know, that's why we're here.
Read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Chris, did you, I was, I didn't know who's the other side. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Who's the other? Yeah.
Right, Susan Lauder, and I have had a business on South Main Street. And I've always been, I've always wondered about reluctance for people to walk. You know, from a side street to South Main, or when I drive to Cooperstown, which I know very well, Saratoga, Millbrook, Rhinebeck, all these different places of different sizes, granted. If I can get in like you know, a mile away, it's like, wow, great, it's walkable. I never hear that here. In fact, when I was a business owner, it was like, wow, there was a space right out front, so I could come in today. And if, you know, if you just go out a little bit more to municipal lots, then, you know, I just walk a little bit, but I think it's kind of a curious, you know, lot of, so various kind of sports, oriented, you know, walkability, location. But when it comes to visiting a retail location, it's like, wow, I need to park up front.
Oh, interesting, yeah. Excuse me one second. Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's interesting when you think of even going to a shopping mall, how far out you park sometimes just to get into the mall, but somehow here, it's somehow doesn't work.
Two owners.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how do we change that mentality? We're sitting here in Boston, I agree with her, I agree with it. I mean, a woman who did yoga, my client said he saw her put her flashing lights in a handicap thing and ran with her yoga mat into yoga because she wanted to have the front. What are you doing at yoga? People walk.
So you're paying somebody to exercise you and you won't walk the block.
That you can't tell people like, what are you talking about? It's a beautiful village to walk. You're not in a scary area. It's very safe. It's beautiful. Like, how do you, like, I try to lecture people, you know, park here, it's beautiful. You walk by, you get a coffee, you know, it's just, how do you change the mentality of people? And we're sitting there wanting to manifest that. I agree with her. You know, they walk from Wegmans and there's 18 handicaps before you can get to the front door of Wegmans. Everybody walks it. We want our food. You know, how do you change the mentality?
I think we both have hit on something that we have talked about for a lot. I mean, I love walking in the village. I don't see that as an issue for me, but it's interesting for people coming into the village, as you say, you know, looking to get their hair done or shop or do whatever. There is a different mentality. Hands down, I couldn't agree with you more.
I will just say, part of it, at least the way I take it, and again, I lived in New York City for years, is a view that you kind of have to do what you just did. It's a bit of shaming, right? You have to publicly let people know. I'll take the blame, but I'll shame people, right? Say, come on, you know, like, what are you doing? Part of it is, again, when I moved in, we live on Jefferson Road, near Grant, right? So further out from the main area. I have two little kids, my wife, we walk everywhere. Doesn't matter if it's, you know, snowy. You walk in, go to Bill's Bakery, get a coffee, you do whatever, you go to the canal, it's nice, right? We picked this because it reminded us from New York City where you could walk everywhere. So part of it is a bit of a shift. I know we have 4 neighbors, all young families. They do the same thing. Get their wagon with their kids, they walk in. We all picked our houses in this village because of what it offered. What the active transportation plan offered, right? That is a huge part, is that we live in a village where we're telling everyone we want to have you do more biking, more walking, more whatever, which will help alleviate, or it should in theory, the parking issue, right? The more of me's out there that are walking to Bill's Bakery instead of driving my car for 2 minutes to find no parking is a better, you know, option than having people hop into their 7-row SUV and take up 2 parking spots to go pick up a coffee.
Dave, I think that most village people walk. I think that
Yeah,
the people that are
villages
parking
people
are the
walk.
ones that are coming from outside in. I think most villages walk. I think so.
But you know, there's another component to that, and I'll just say very briefly, because I see it's coming up finance, so you know, okay. There's another component that also is identified in the active transportation plan, it's called wayfinding. Where maybe you park in the library parking lot, you get a spot. And there's some signs that say 8-minute walk to the dairy. You know, 5-minute walk to Thirsty, you know, I mean, you know, you kind of identify how long it's literally gonna take you to get from point A to B as a pedestrian. And I've worked with other municipalities on this and have really, over time, educated people and made a difference. Because it was geared to people who were driving into the community, who wanted to, you know, shop or have dinner there. And, you know, instead of circling forever looking for park a few blocks away, oh, I see the sign, you know, there's a wayfinding pole and it says, my walk's 8 minutes, or, you know, somehow it frames your walk differently, you know. Yeah, there's some hands up, I didn't want to miss, Bonnie, you had, and then Tim, you had your hand up, yeah, just Bonnie.
I love that idea, by the way, finding idea, in fact, doing a map
Yeah,
with our
I
walking
like
path.
that.
Okay.
having an app,
We have a completely different parking issue by us at Roundtable. Now it's fine, the winter, nobody comes down there, the parking lots, we got tons of spaces. But once that sun comes out, we get all the young couples with their dogs, with their baby carriages, with their bicycles. They take all the parking spots, all of them. And
They get on their bikes and go ride
they
it
get
down.
on the bike and they go to the canal, but we have no, we don't have anybody coming into our shop because there's nowhere to park.
Oh, you're saying someone actually drives in with a bike on
They
the
drive
path?
in.
yeah, they drive in to
Then
spend
it's
the
not-
day
Yeah,
here, basically.
In that
Yeah.
sense, it's private property with a tenant landlord relationship that we can't enforce.
Yeah, there's no,
Unless.
Well, they enforce that, you still have.
Yes.
Mike coming down ticketing.
yeah, Mikey will,
So-
yeah, if you're in fire lanes and you're
Oh, fire,
obstructed,
sure.
yeah, he really should be doing that. There were some other hands up in the back, I think. Yeah. Oh, hi, yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, Sally Sutherland Street, 75 Monroe Avenue, my understanding is that there was businesses going in over there, restaurants.
They're zoned for a restaurant.
Yeah, so will there be public parking? Or-
There's public parking on the
Okay,
site.
so
There
that's
will be.
gonna add more parking to the village. So they're adding a sign down there with a big P that says, you know, have parking down here.
I don't know if the parking's gonna be just for their business.
Yeah,
We wouldn't.
I don't know.
Yeah. Residents.
Yeah, residents and their business, I don't know, because it's
I
private.
still
right?
am, yeah,
yeah, it's private property unless we had a lease contract with them that.
Yeah.
That's my next statement was, a lot of these parking spots in the village, like it behind Breed, behind Book Culture,
Mhm.
are they privately owned?
Yeah.
Breed will
Mhm.
shut down.
Understand the lot behind Breed, there is an intermunicipal agreement with the town and the village. Where we take care of the lot in exchange for it being designated as one of our municipal lots. We also have an agreement that we entered into this past fall with the Pittsburgh Fire District. Right next door, you know, the old Bank of America building, that lot as well, so we haven't been able to put the sign up yet, the town's coming up with the sign for municipal parking, because it's winter.
And I don't know.
Yeah, so we need to pick up more spaces there, yeah, we have some more, oh, yeah, okay.
Just on that topic, the brief contract. Sorry, the brief contract is a long-term contract. I don't know the duration of that. The fire district is a 10-year lease, but it has 1 year renewable. So there is a risk on our end or their end.
Okay,
Right.
thank you for
So
that, yeah,
would it be, I mean, this is just a suggestion, but would it be helpful for those people that own the parking spots to put a pay meter like they do on Park Avenue? And some businesses have access to it, so the businesses will pay the person that owns the parking lot.
So just a comment, Steve, currently, parking meter is not permitted, is that correct?
Not permitted by our village code,
Right.
it's in our code,
so we have it in our code, it's not.
so that if
You would have.
If everybody's interested in that, we could circle back and even take a look at it. Again, it's a discussion for options and other aspects. So, yeah, it was Chris and then Tim, okay, you're after Chris, okay. Tim.
That's fine.
Yeah, Chris and then you.
I
I'm here all night.
I wanna make a comment. that-
Okay, 0 on them. All right.
for me, I'm unequivocally behind, supporting new business coming into town. I think it would be, it's far harder to gather the energy, capital, ingenuity, and idea to open a business here. To get out there and do that, than it is for us to sit around and talk. This is all free. And you can come up with all kinds of ways to stall, stop, or thwart a business from opening. But it's really difficult to get the people, like if Colliers has produced some parking pains, but I love having them there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I said Colliers has produced some parking paints, but I love having them there, and it's a good trade-off. It's a good trade-off for the village, for the businesses here, and for the entire community. And I don't think, given what I understand of the available spaces out here, that we can drive ourselves in a situation that's actually gonna do damage to the character of the place. It's gonna be far harder for you to find people who wanna come into these spaces, pay the rents, run the business well, and actually become part of our community. So that should be our effort. That's my point of view. I support wholeheartedly, unrestricting businesses, with that. The other thing I have is a question. When we opened, and I know we often have a lot of customers coming in, producing a lot of cars, different times, weekends and stuff. Nobody ever asked me about parking. So what's going on with the parking regulations now? Is it only for restaurants, or do spas or retailers have different requirements?
Yeah, Steve, do you want to speak to that?
Every business has the requirement for, based on the use of number of spaces. Like in your case, it would be a square footage of retail space.
So there was some understanding that we were gonna cause.
Well, originally, I think your business expanded through the building, you know what I mean? I think you started out smaller and then it kind of expanded, just, it happened, And along that line, if you were to take your square footage compared to how many spaces you actually had.
I don't have any official spaces.
Right, zero. But you survive, right?
Yeah.
Your business does well and you survive because you offer a good product.
And people will come in and find,
And
they'll-
that's what
they'll
I'm saying, and it's
accommodate.
much harder to,
Mhm.
to get someone to come in there and do that for any of us that have businesses here. It's much harder to do that, so that's just I don't see such a potential for having a parking space. I can do the best you can with accessing, creating the right signage, getting people further out and having them walk in and enforcing the code with more tickets and stuff.
Has
Anyway.
anybody ever been to Europe? Ever walk into the centro, or have to, you take mass transit, or you have to park your car and walk into the center of the old heart of whatever the little town you're visiting? That's kind of, maybe where we're going, where we have to read what this model looks like. And the idea that, as you're saying, there's no mandates necessarily for business for parking. I don't think you'll see too much change. We're already here. I can tell you, and Steve, you can speak to this. Not everybody's in compliance with what we literally have in the code. Because we keep saying everybody's taking, quote, the same spots over and over again. And we can talk varying business hours, and some are later and some are not. At the end of the day, here we are with what we have, period. There was a hand in the back, Tim,
Things, I agree with what you just said, people coming and going, but I think we're going on the basis of that fictitious 400 and some odd parking spots, because how many of those parking spots, and I'm guessing it's at least 25%, are taken up for more than 8 hours a day? You have people that, we used to have the parking ride, I don't think anybody's doing that too much anymore, but you have people that, and the business owners, they take up their spot, but then you also have town employees that take up a lot of spots. So that 400 is kind of fictitious, and if you really want to think out of the box, go dig a big hole over in the municipal parking lot and do something like what Fairport did and make it up and down.
Yeah.
That's how you're gonna invent more parking spots. You're gonna put a parking garage in.
Yeah, that's the town's problem.
Like I said, the county village should approach the town and say, we need more parking spots, go get a grant and build it.
Okay, no, appreciate that. The spots aren't fictitious, they do exist. It's just how they're used. You know, it's
That's what I'm
not,
saying, you
yes,
have to take.
but,
the
but
full-time
I just
stuff.
want to correct it, because they do exist, anyway, yeah, was there another? Yes, yeah.
So the village of Pittsburgh doesn't have an Instagram account, so just circling back to what everyone was saying about. You know, getting people aware that you can like walk and like park further away and walk in. What if there was something that brought just different awareness to the village with like a social media account? You know, you could have someone go to different street areas or put up, you know, different markers of like what you're saying with, you know, oh, you know, did you know if you park right here, it's a this minute walk to there, and just allow people who are coming into the area, you know, different information about the businesses, and that type of.
Yeah, it'd be nice to work with the chamber on that, you know, to support, you know, the businesses too, yeah. Oh, I've got a little thumbs up from the president of the chamber, maybe. Okay, yeah, any other business owners right now that want to weigh in on this? We're at past the hour mark, and I know you've all had a long day. I do see a resident would like to comment.
I just wanna make sure there's no other business people on me out of respect. Is there anything? Thank you, I know Alexander said I'd wait until the end. Thank you guys so much for letting me attend, and hear this. I am so supportive of pro-business, I think all of you know me in the village, I am a tree.
You can,
And support.
Sorry.
Excuse me, your name?
Holmes. So sorry. Frequented all of your businesses, support them all regularly over the past 10 years. And I love this idea of looking for creative ways to maximize our village, bring new people in, bring new business in. I am pro Pittsburgh, so I'm not pro business, I'm not pro resident. I would like to say thank you, Dave, for acknowledging, I love the ideas of growth, but in this plan to bubble out the pressure point. My street's the first one out of the village, which I welcome. All the municipal building people park on my street. But when there's a bar that might be open till 2 AM, 7 nights a week, that's where I was saying I would be greatly appreciative if we could just please factor in the residents and the sensitivity, because I want to stay long-term in this business, in this village, to support all of you. And I'm very grateful for this forum. I know you don't want to hear what I have to say, but you know,
That's absolutely 100%
thank you for welcoming my comments.
Of
Because
course,
I want to see all of us thrive, and I don't think we can separate village, residents, and businesses. And so I love the open forum of this. It's just the expressions and everything, I'm sorry. Thank you for your nice graces and for allowing me to speak. I just kindly ask that as we're bubbling out with lack of parking, because I know on 2 prior calls and meetings, Breathe Yoga said he's terminating his lease and not going to allow parking. And I've heard that they're going to be expanding the fire hall and needing more space there, so we're going to lose parking there too. So I love the creative ideas, the 2-story. I come in peace here, middle ground. Please just don't drive me out of the city, because I have drunks on my street at 2 AM with no police and no patrolling.
okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you for sharing that, Julie, thank you very much. We're gonna start to wrap this up, unless there's somebody who hasn't spoken yet, who has not spoken yet, who'd like to weigh in, and then I'll see you, just, yeah, yes, name please.
So Greg Messner, representing both Messner Flooring, along with my brother Peter here, but also on my half, with the Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce. And again, you know, I think having open discussions is great. I think we're all getting some ideas here. And I mean, I wrote down a number of different words, but I think really what we like to do is come together. You know, I think, you know, certain things we say were, you know, I think we could call, you know, the new owner that's thinking of opening up a bar or whatever. I think it's a great idea. I think Pittsburgh is great. We need stuff like that, but let's just talk, figure out, you know, maybe his hours aren't till 2, you know, let's figure things out. I think we're all good people. We have Pittsburgh in mind. And I think really the thing that it was talking about, and I will just say that the chamber has to step up too and be a part of the voice here, because this is it's a great area. And I think the people that are here tonight, we're not going anywhere. This is our home, or our home away from home. And we just want to be respectful of our neighbors, our businesses, our customers. And it's just a simple concept, be a good neighbor and talk to your neighbor. You know, I think, you know, a number of people that have seen this tonight, they haven't seen it in a number of years, but I think that we can all communicate and keep the dialogue open, you know, and I think, Mary, you do a great job, your board does a great job, but just continue to keep things open. I think when we hear things that, you know, you hear half the story, or the other half, let's just come together, you know, so.
That's a nice comment to hear sort of towards the end of this. And I know trustee Marshall, you had something, did you want to add or?
Well, then,
or-
I'm sure done.
Okay, and then
Yeah, I will.
trustee Wills.
I just want to say a few things. Oh, it's great to see so many business owners and few residents out tonight. I got a list, you know, from the village about businesses that we sent that postcard to. And there's 2 pages front to back, right, single space. And it was pretty eye-popping just how successful the business community in the village is. And so that's on you, that's on all of us working together. And so it's just, hopefully we can continue to improve on the ecosystem. The one sort of closing question I had to everybody here is, you know, sort of show of hands type thing. Generally speaking, are you in favor of eliminating parking requirements? By a show of hands, is that yes or no?
Yes, means put your hand.
Yes, it means put your hand up, eliminate.
That we really take.
So it's about a 50-50. So this is really a conversation that, you know, needs to be thought through, you know, carefully. And I just appreciate the beginning and where we go with this next. I don't know, but it's good to see.
Thank you, yeah. Trustee Wills.
Okay, so likewise, it's again, for somebody who's relatively new to the village, it was very cool to see
Yeah.
4 full pages of businesses. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize all these places were here. Half of them, I can't use because I cut my own hair, but like, it was great to be able to see that. You know, the lime green or something. But 2 major takeaways, even without thinking about code adjustments, it sounds like there is a genuine signage improvement that we could do, right?
That's where I'm going.
At a minimum, improving, telling people where can you park? What are the times? What are the limits? Make it, I don't know whether some huge neon, whatever, but just really improving the signage. The other aspect is I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, the parking for 8 hours in a location when it should be a 2, or you have a business owner who, you know, you're trying to run into the business and you see, hey, I know that's the business owner's car and that's where customers are supposed to be able to park and the car is there for 10 hours, right? So parking enforcement, do you guys feel, and there's more of a question, do you guys feel like parking enforcement has been adequate?
Or you want more? or
Do you feel like we need more?
Yeah.
Whether it's,
Yeah.
okay, so you feel like it doesn't even exist. I know I've had,
Louis Leone.
so I know I've had some residents as well as business owners who reached out to me and said they feel like they don't see enough enforcement. It sounds like,
There's no rules.
Yeah, what are we
Right?
enforcing?
Like,
Exactly.
there's no sign saying.
Which goes back to
parking
signage.
only, you know, 2-hour parking. Retail parking or
I mean,
whatever.
what if you could scan a QR code and it comes up on your phone and, you know, you can just see where where you can park and all that. I don't know. I'm just, yes.
Can I just talk about the enforcement real quick?
Yeah.
Yes, the clerk. We do have a parking monitor. He does go around. What you probably don't understand is he's only around 20 hours for the village. So in a week, he's only putting in 20 hours. So you're opening many more hours than that. So I guess the question is 20 hours enough? Or should the village look at increasing that time? Because you might see him a little longer out there, but he's doing 10 hours for the town, and that's specifically for the town.
He works for both municipalities.
Right,
Just
so that's the question, you know, if we feel we
And let
need
us know how,
more.
because we're doing our budget.
Yeah, that's why I'm typing in.
Well,
You know,
now-
is that something we should invest more in, is having him out there more,
How long has it been 20 hours?
many years?
Like I said, I'm dating myself. I remember Louis Leone. He did it in 20 hours. I mean, they called him ticket time.
I think it's
I'm
been,
not ready for that.
I think it's been forever, you know.
No, it's been forever, but understand, businesses are open 7 days a week and 8 hours a day. He might be doing the village for a few hours in the morning, maybe a couple hours in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So he is ticketing, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You know, he's not chalking tires, there's a different method now. But we are ticketing, so it's not lack of enforcement, it might be not enough enforcement time. That's where I'm going.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Excuse me.
Judicial review. They just waited.
Well, we're negotiating that right now. Yeah.
What kind of signage do you need on your property if you wanna have somebody tow, has somebody that owns a tow company?
Talk offline with Steve.
Well, do you need to have sign, what do you have to?
We'd have to bring it back to the board about how we would implement towing, how that. would be enforced. Yeah, how would that be enforced?
I just wanna put a point out though.
Thanks, Sam.
Right, this is that, I use the word danger, whatever you wanna call it. It's that back and forth. The more restrictive you are on parking requirements and businesses coming in, the less you're gonna have a parking, you gotta turn people over every 2 hours, right? The more, the less you have to enforce, right? So it's just, I think there's a little give and take.
Yeah, I think we're all looking at, okay, couple last comments here and then.
With the reinforcement, so I'm gonna speak for the salons in the area, because our services can go more than 2 hours to the free. So if you do that, it's a negative. I love Sally's idea about a payment. Like anything, like if you go to Diva, you want something up in front. If you want the first of everything, you pay. So if someone wants to stand in front of the bookstore and pay to walk in or roll through his door, they should pay. Because it's a positive one to go into this village to make upgrades of what we need. Instead of giving someone a $75 to $175 ticket for parking where they shouldn't park,
And they won't come back.
then they will never come back and go to your spot. Then we all lose business.
That's
It's
interesting.
fine for us to get it.
That's interesting because I know meters have come up, and the concern was, would it negatively impact businesses to have a meter, but maybe at this point it wouldn't.
Just, I would say the ones that are on the main street where they want to be
Okay.
first, me first, then the people will go, oh, I walk, and they'll be better off because it's free.
Right. But the more you ticket, the less they come.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to sort this out.
For both the village and,
Okay, Steve, what, you had.
Well, I just was a thought, we talked about enforcement, and I thought, you talk about 2 hours parking. You could literally create a circle of where you think the most viable or important parking to the residents is, to the businesses. So you reach out to Lincoln and some of the other side streets, and that's also 2 hour parking. So it discourages the town workers from parking on the side street and staying there all day. They have to go park farther away and walk in, which gives the, clientele better spaces. Some may not come back, if they've been ticketed twice, but, learn. You know what I mean?
No, I think these are all good points, definitely, but just so you understand, I have been speaking on a regular basis with the town, because I know there have been issues. Specifically with town employees, we have our own lot here, for all of us, so I think it's a little bit different for us, and I know there's been feedback about that, that they're tied up all day, basically. Few last comments here from the board, maybe, and then we're gonna, if there's anything anybody wants to add.
My thing is if people didn't say anything for any reason that they would like to, send us an email, send us individual emails. All your words matter, and we're definitely thoughtful and appreciative.
We also put a suggestion box out there for anything else that you would like to see covered in the future, let's keep this going. It doesn't always just have to be about parking, although that's huge, not going away. And Sandra, yes.
And if you didn't sign in, please do. And if you received the postcard and your business name is wrong or you got another business,
Yeah.
please make an update on that. I know that the list was a little outdated, so we're trying to do our best to make sure everyone's represented. But thanks for coming because you still got it.
So much to everybody coming, for waiting in. My door is always open. Be continued.
Adjourn, please.
Close?
Yes,
Oh,
please.
motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Trustee Marshall. Trustee Wills. Trustee Coe.
Aye.
Trustee Lindbeck. Mayor Plummer. Motion passes.
I got it.
Okay.